Hello, and welcome to our channel. This week, Kevin takes us through Ezekiel chapter 40. We get to see and hear of his prophecy for the millennial temple in Jerusalem. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.
Okay, let's go ahead and get started in there. You'll see the title I picked today was Hope and Restoration, and you'll see why. Ezekiel being placed up on a high mountaintop and looking south, that's important, toward a city within a city, and that city within a city is actually a temple. It's a walled temple. And it's not the temple that exists in Jerusalem as Ezekiel sitting in Babylon on the river Chebar. It's a new one, and you'll see the differences as we go through. Okay, could somebody read Ezekiel 41 through 3?
In the 25th year of our captivity, at the beginning of the year, on the 10th day of the month, in the 14th year after the city was captured, on the very same day the hand of the Lord was upon me, and he took me there. In the visions of God, he took me into the land of Israel, and set me on a very high mountain. On it toward the south was something like the structure of a city. He took me there, and behold, there was a man whose appearance was like the appearance of bronze. He had a line of flax and a measuring rod in his hand, and he stood in the gateway.
Thank you. And as you can see, there's going to be a lot of specificity and detail in this, and there's a reason for that. Remember, we've talked about in Isaiah and Ezekiel, when he tells them the exact dates they are. There's a reason. A, they probably correlate to something, and B, he wants them to know that this is history. This is happening, and it actually happened. God is telling Ezekiel to be very specific. So what is he telling us in all that? Okay, the specificity of the dates are kind of interesting. The 25th year of exile makes it 597 BC is when this is happening, when he sees this vision. Okay, and what's interesting about it being the 25th year, it's a midpoint in the Jubilee, in the 50-year cycle of Jubilee, and there's usually after 50 years they get released on the Day of Atonement. That's kind of a Middle East tradition. So they're halfway through the exile. The vision came on the 10th day of the month in the beginning or head of the year. So this computes to about April 28th, 573 BC. It's just interesting that they can calculate it that much. They think that this date is the Babylonian date of the festival of Marduk. And why is that so important? Because the Jews were turning away from God. Hey, you put us in exile. You didn't save us from exile. Maybe this Marduk guy's got some. So we think that he was given this vision at this time to turn the Jews back toward the Lord and Yahweh. Okay, so this shows Yahweh's supremacy just by when he picked him to have the vision. The 14th year after the city had fallen indicates 573 BC. Okay, so all the dates fit and just very specific. And as we remember, when he's telling them to be that specific, it's because he wants to make it almost like a legal document. Yes, sir.
I was thinking about why the specificity in Ezekiel. And if you think about it, it really sets the timeline for the books surrounding Ezekiel. If you think back to, Isaiah, if you think about Daniel, if you think about Jeremiah, if you think about the other books, none of them have this kind of specificity. So it's almost like God is pinpointing, like you said, a very historical timeline.
And we can hang those other books and date somewhat from because Ezekiel makes it so specific, we can hang other books and dates on that. Okay. So Ezekiel 42, we just read that, but he's sitting on a mountain looking south, and he sees this temple in the middle of the city. And it is itself, the compound itself is considered a city. Neither the mountain or the city is identified. However, Ezekiel sees a structure, and the word used in the original language is Ir, which is a walled city. It indicates a walled city, so the temple complex is seen thusly. It's a walled city within a walled city. And even though it's not named, all the temples have been associated with Jerusalem. So
and there was a really interesting video yesterday of Jerusalem, because they were talking about the missiles coming in and all that. You could see the outer city, and right halfway in between, here's the wall.
Mhm.
and inside is
Yeah.
the inner city.
Mhm.
And I mean, it was a beautiful picture
Yeah.
of what we're seeing here.
Yeah. Yeah, we could tie a lot of this to what's happening today, and I'm going to show you a picture of the eastern gate of the city, and it's got some interesting stuff. Okay, he's looking south, so there's really no geographic basis for this. Okay, there's Mount Hermon, and I'll show you a map in a minute, would be one choice because of the religious significance of it. The Mount of Olives would be another, but Mount Hermon's 150 miles away, so you couldn't even see Jerusalem probably from Mount Hermon. The Mount of Olives is directly east, so that's out because he wouldn't be looking south. Okay. Rather than a physical mountain, he's being directed to look down from Sinai, where God first revealed himself to people. Remember, this is a vision, so he could be sitting on Sinai and looking down at Jerusalem. So this is God's giving him this vision. Okay, and I hope you can see this here. I got my pointer. This is the best one. Actually, Mount Hermon right now is up in Syria. There's Mount Hermon, and Jerusalem is all the way down here. Okay, and of course they don't have it on there because it's so close. But the Mount of Olives is basically in Jerusalem, and it's right outside the East Gate. Remember we talked about when Christ left, he went down through the Valley of Kidron and the Valley of Death, and up into Gethsemane, and went directly east. 3. This verse we've already read. He took me there, and behold, there was a man whose appearance was like the appearance of bronze, and he had a line of flax and a measuring rod in his hand, and he stood in the gateway. But if you can think, when he's talking about a measuring rod and a line of flax, that would have been flax fibers from a plant, and it's going to be lined out in probably in a rod. Well, the measuring rod is in one hand and the flax in another. If you think of a carpenter's measure ruler, and a measure carpenter's tape, would roll out for several thousand yards or whatever. That's what he's got in his hands. And I tried to give you as much detail as I could. With the palms, it'll tell you the palms are on the face of the building. I left it kind of open. This gate would have gone back fairly long in a building sort of configuration, but I left it open so you could see that the temple is facing the east gate. And that has significance. What's the difference of the east gate of the temple? Or the east gate of Jerusalem?
East gate is one that's eternal. That's where Jesus will be.
That's where he's going to come back through, right? What's that?
Blocked.
It's walled. Yeah, and I'll show you a picture of that in a minute. It's not only walled, they did some other things to try to keep Jesus from coming through. Ezekiel meets a supernatural figure at the east gate. And it's reminiscent of the bronze. Remember the bronze figures in at 1:7 that they're holding up the throne of Yahweh. So this is pretty. It's a reoccurring figure, I guess. The bronze figure is going to guide Ezekiel through this new temple complex, and you'll see this is not like Solomon's temple. It is not the one that like the one that was rebuilt by Zerubbabel and then added to by Herod. It's we can see as they study this that it's a completely different temple. It's much larger. All the dimensions are much larger. Okay, bronze man has a cord of flax fibers and a measuring reed or rod, just depending on which your Bible you have. So think of a carpenter's measure and a yardstick, and these will point to the importance of what will follow. Ezekiel in this is the mediator of a divine vision, and he's about to be shown the revelation of a heavenly temple that will make the tabernacle, Solomon's temple, and the one built by Zerubbabel pale in comparison. This is going to be, even though the other ones were fantastic, this is going to be something that God has specifically directed them to build, although he did on the tabernacle and all those too, but he's going to receive instructions. Somebody want to read 4 for me?
And the man said to me, Son of man, look with your eyes and hear with your ears, and fix your mind on everything I show you. For you were brought here so that I might show them to you. Declare to the house of Israel everything you see.
I kind of feel sorry for Ezekiel because he's going to get a load of information in just a second. And, and the one when they were telling him, they gave him a scribe to follow him around and write everything down. Ezekiel apparently has got to remember this. So hopefully he'll get some divine help with that. Defines the importance of of what is about to be transmitted to Ezekiel and how important it is for him to transmit it back to the people of Israel. Remember, he's going to be transmitting this back to the exiles in Babylon on the river Chebar. So that's but it gives some hope to us in modern day too, as we go through, you'll see. A mention of divine visions and a mountain and his position on the mountain invite a comparison to Moses on Mount Sinai. So think about how important that was. And now this is when God, in the end, is going to bring his people finally to him and be in the final temple. He's getting the visions for that. So the two are kind of about the same in importance. So, okay. And I remember that he's still in Chebar in Babylon. He's not in Jerusalem. He's not actually in Jerusalem. Remember when you used to say, I'm never going to use this stuff in real life? We're going to study cubits today, kids. I know. We're not going to stop and convert every cubit into a measurement, but I'll give you a way of looking at this that tells you that this temple is going to be bigger and better. Israelites knew 3 different types of cubits. The sizes varied by 5, 6, or 7 handbreadths, the number of handbreadths. The one that Solomon used was 6 handbreadths, and I'll give you something like the one in this temple is 7. And when you think you get about 3 more inches per cubit, it starts to add up pretty quickly. Okay, the cubit used to build Solomon's temple was different from Ezekiel's temple. Okay, like I just said, the normal cubit was 17.6 inches or 6 handbreadths. The long cubit employed in the vision was 20.5 inches or 7 handbreadths, a cubit plus a span. So you start thinking if you have 10 cubits, that gives you an extra 30 inches on any wall or any measurement you take. So given there's so many walls and so many measurements, that really starts to vastly increase the size of the temple that's going to be envisioned here. Okay, given the number of measurements we will read, you can see that the envisioned temple is going to be much larger and grander than any previous temple. Okay, and by the way, a rod is another measurement you'll hear in there, is 6 cubits or 10.2 feet. So somebody want to read Ezekiel 40?
Now there was a wall all around the outside of the temple. In the man's hand was a measuring rod 6 cubits long, each being a cubit and a handbreadth, and he measured the width of the wall structure, 1 rod, and the height 1 rod.
So, and then if we look at that, and I did get this confirmed by the commentaries, this indicates the wall would be 10 foot tall and 10 foot wide if you cross-sectioned it. So, but giving us an idea of how massive this thing is going to be. 6 cubits would make the wall about 10 foot tall and 10 foot wide, or 10.2, I guess, is more accurately. This is the outer wall on the compound. And this is the outer wall that defines this city as a sacred temple compound. Okay, I just wanted to give you a picture here so you can envision what we're talking about. And you can see that outer wall there. This is the eastern gate, and you can see the eastern gate opens up to the temple, which I think is pretty interesting, considering that Jesus will come back in here. The inner gate from the east, and it's built exactly like the outer gate, except the vestibules are turned around. The vestibule on this one faces inward. The vestibule on this one faces outward. And of course, here's the temple and the 2 porticos that are named, and I got their names in here somewhere. From this gate to this gate, that's 150 feet.
Okay.
That give you a good idea how big this thing is? Yeah. So they're anticipating a growing number of worshipers, I guess. 46 through 16, the outer east gate.
Then he went to the gateway, which faced east, and he went up its stairs and measured the threshold of the gateway, which was 1 rod wide, and the other threshold was 1 rod wide. Each gate chamber was 1 rod long and 1 rod wide. Between the gate chambers was a space of 5 cubits, and the threshold of the gateway by the vestibule of the inside gate was 1 rod. He also measured the vestibule of the inside gate, 1 rod. Then he measured the vestibule of the gateway, 8 cubits, and the gate posts, 2 cubits. The vestibule of the gate was on the inside. In the eastern gateway were 3 gate chambers on one side and 3 on the other. The 3 were all the same size. Also, the gate posts were of the same size on this side and that side. He measured the width of the entrance to the gateway, 10 cubits, and the length of the gate, 13 cubits. There was a space in front of the gate chambers, 1 cubit on this side and 1 cubit on that side. The gate chambers were 6 cubits on this side and 6 cubits on that side. Then he measured the gateway from the roof of one gate chamber to the roof of the other. The width was 25 cubits, as door faces door. He measured the gate posts 60 cubits high, and the court all around the gateway extended to the gate post. From the front of the entrance gate to the front of the vestibule of the inner gate was 50 cubits. There were beveled window frames in the gate chambers and in their intervening archways on the inside of the gateway all around, and likewise in the vestibules. There were windows all around on the inside, and on each gate post were palm trees.
You can remember that's a recurrent theme in the temple with the palm trees. Okay, and we'll look at a diagram of this gate, and the gate in and of itself is pretty massive. And you noticed in that illustration I had, the gate itself was about, I think it was 50 foot high, whereas the wall's only 10 foot high, and that's for defensive purposes. We'll talk a little bit about that. This is the existing East Gate in Jerusalem right now, and it's pretty interesting. I think it was Saruman, when he conquered Jerusalem, blocked this gate up to prevent Jesus from coming back through it. But this is the gate that Jesus passed through on Palm Sunday, and it's the one where he will return, if we remember right. And you can see all the things they've done there. There's 4 different Muslim cemeteries planted around this thing to keep people from, because they say a rabbi cannot walk through unconsecrated ground. This is a diagram of just the east gate. And remember, all the outer gates are just exactly like it. The inner gates are just like it, but the vestibule is reversed, so they're a mirror image or bookends of each other. Try to use some of the main features. 7 steps up, okay, off the level ground. You go in, and they give you dimensions for all these walls and all these windows, but they know what they think what they are. These are guard rooms. They have guards in here pretty much constantly. Okay. And these windows have a special feature, and I'll talk about that. And then these are probably just storage for different things for the guards themselves. And then you go out, and then you're in the outer courtyard. Okay. But you can see it's on a pretty massive scale. It's 50 foot by 20 foot, 25 foot, or no, 50 cubits by 20 cubits. So 50 cubits times 20.2, it's pretty big. Okay. Now it talks about in the original language that the windows go from narrow to wide, and what that describes is an archer's turret. So they're up about 50 foot off the ground in some places and less in others, but they're prepared to defend the temple. Okay, and you can see by all the guard rooms that they have plenty of people there. Okay, and then here we have this is Ezekiel's temple, not one of the previous ones, so it gives you an idea. And there's a scale on there. I don't think you can see, but it's big. Let's put it that way. Okay. And so I'm going to point out, we've already talked about the gates, and the outer things are all chambers and side rooms. This says side rooms for guards, side rooms for clergy, I think. Is that what it says? Laity, okay. And then the priest, chambers for the priests, okay. Inner gates, altar. Somewhere out here, there's a big brass cauldron where they reduce the ashes of the sacrifices into complete ash, or so then they would, do whatever they did with them. Okay, step up into the temple itself, and you have the nave, and then this place is like the Holy of Holies. This building back here, we think is storage. Okay. And back here in this area is where they actually brought in the sacrifices and so forth while they're still on their feet. What am I missing here? Oh, yeah, I do want to talk about this. See this mosaic pavement here? Mm-hmm. That is level with actually it is lower than this part of the court. So we're stepping up, go around here, step up. And there's also you step up for the altar. Okay, what does that mean? Keep that in mind for a sec. This is what we're going to be going through in the next. It's going to go all the way into 46. The tour of the temple takes all the way through 46. Steve will get into this a little bit in 40, 41, and 42. But Ezekiel comes in, starts out here at the east gate, comes in, looks around at the outer court. And you can see I've got the verses there, so you could identify them. Comes over here and talks about the north gate, because this is where some of the sacrificial stuff takes place. This is actually where it takes place in this east gate. Then he walks over and sees that the south gate is identical, goes in through the south inner court gate, walks over here, sees the altar, comes over here, and then this is where he's really instructed in depth about, there's tables here, 2 tables here, 2 tables here, and there's 2 tables on the outside of here. And it's where they washed the sacrifices and then actually did the sacrifice, cut them up, killed them. Then they took them back inside and put them in that bronze altar that's missing from here. Oh, there it is right there. Okay. Then they go in, stop in the nave, come back out, and then go up here. And then this is next week, I guess. They're looking at the priestly quarters, the priestly kitchen, and they come back over here and go out. And that's the end of the vision.
They really valued symmetry.
Yeah.
Throughout this whole thing.
Yeah.
Everything is symmetrical.
Okay, will somebody please read verses 17 through 19?
Then he brought me into the outer court, and there were chambers and a pavement made all around the court. 30 chambers faced the pavement. The pavement was by the side of the gateways, corresponding to the length of the gateways. This was the lower pavement. Then he measured the width from the front of the lower gateway to the front of the inner court exterior, 100 cubits toward the east and the north.
So that gives you that scale we talked about. So, all right. And this is the outer north gate. I want to see if there's anything. Could somebody read that 20 through 23?
On the outer court was also a gateway facing north, and he measured its length and its width. Its gate chambers, 3 on this side and 3 on that side. Its gate posts and its archways had the same measurements as the first gate. Its length was 50 cubits and its width 25 cubits. Its windows and those of its archways, and also its palm trees, had the same measurements as the gateway facing east. It was ascended by 7 steps, and its archway was in front of it. A gate of the inner court was opposite the northern gateway, just as the eastern gateway, and he measured from gateway to gateway 100 cubits.
Thank you. Yeah, so you see what he's doing. He's getting a complete tour, and you kind of saw it in that last slide. He's getting a complete tour, so he knows exactly how this thing is going to be constructed. And it's all symmetrical, and it's all very detailed. So that's the point of that. The outer south gate, the same thing. He went back around.
After that he brought me toward the south, and there a gateway was facing south, and he measured its gateposts and archways according to these same measurements. There were windows in it, and in its archways all around like those windows. Its length was 50 cubits, and its width 25 cubits. 7 steps led up to it, and its archway was in front of them, and it had palm trees on its gateposts, 1 on this side and 1 on that side. There was also a gateway on the inner court, facing south, and he measured from gateway to gateway toward the south, 100 cubits.
The south gate and the north gate are identical. Okay, the gates of the inner wall. Somebody want to read 28 through 31, please?
Then he brought me to the inner court through the southern gateway. He measured the southern gateway according to these same measurements. Also its gate chambers, its gate posts, and its archways were according to these same measurements. There were windows in it and in its archways all around. It was 50 cubits long and 25 cubits wide. There were archways all around, 25 cubits long and 5 cubits wide. Its archways faced the outer court. Palm trees were on its gateposts, and going up to it were 8 steps.
Okay, now you'll notice that there's a lot of horizontal measurements in here, but very little vertical. Okay, so I mean, we know how high the outer wall is. We know how high the walls are to the guardhouses, but it's interesting that they tell you there's 7 steps and 8 steps. And I came up with a theory on that, and I think it's right, but we'll talk about that here in a little bit. The ascending nature of the temple site. Architecture usually has a meaning. Whatever the feature is has a meaning. You know, just like I remember in some architecture course, like the columns you see on Greek temples, they actually bulge about 1/3 of the way from the bottom because they're meant to look like they're bearing great weight. Okay, and you barely see it with your eyes, but you see that feature. And then cornices on buildings are meant to, instead of your eyes just keep going up, you see the cornice and your head goes like this, and you look at it, and it's sort of a stop. So there's a lot of things in architecture that have meaning, and you may not even realize it. But I looked at all this, and here's what I think. Okay. 7 steps up at the outer gate, And then we have a lower or mosaic pavement, and it describes it pretty well in the commentaries in 4018. Eight more steps up at the inner gate, and then presumably steps up to the portico with the pillars, Jachin and Boaz flanking the stairs. We've talked about those before. And then additionally, there were stairs that were to ascend to the bronze altar were burned to ash. That was the sacrifice that they burned, so it went up to God and gave them protection and everything. So since all outer gates had 7 steps and the inner gates had 8 steps, it presumes a completely level building site, which would have been pretty rough to get anywhere on a building site this big. Okay, so what I think is they're trying to imply that the farther you go toward the inner sanctum and the Holy of Holies, the closer you're getting to God. Okay, and I think that's why they take so much pain to mention how many steps there are. Okay, somebody want to read 32 through 37?
And he brought me into the inner court facing east. He measured the gateway according to these same measurements. Also its gate chambers, its gateposts, and its archways were according to these same measurements. And there were windows in it, and in its archways all around. It was 50 cubits long and 25 cubits wide. Its archways faced the outer court, and palm trees were on its gateposts on this side and on that side, and going up to it were 8 steps. Then he brought me to the north gateway, and measured it according to these same measurements, also its gate chambers, its gateposts, and its archways. It had windows all around. Its length was 50 cubits, and its width 25 cubits. Its gateposts faced the outer court. Palm trees were on its gateposts on this side and on that side, and going up to it were 8 steps.
It's telling you a couple of things here. All 3 of the inner court gates, or the inner court, are identical, the entrances to it. The measurement of 25 by 50 cubits is a perfect rectangle, which is important in symmetrical architecture. Okay, so just talking about more detail and symmetry. Okay, and then we're going to talk about the chamber of offerings at the northern gate. And I got a little bit more detail on this. This is 38 through 43. I'm just going to go ahead and read this if I could. And there was a chamber in its entrance by the gateposts of the gateway where they washed the burnt offering. In the vestibule of the gateway were 2 tables on this side and 2 tables on that side, onto which to slay the burnt offering, the sin offering, and the trespass offering. We'll talk about what those are. At the outer side of the vestibule, as one goes up to the entrance of the northern gateway, were 2 tables, and on the other side of the vestibule, there were 2 tables. 4 tables were on this side, and 4 tables were on that side by the side of the gateway, 8 tables on which they slaughtered the sacrifices. There were also 4 tables of hewn stone for the burnt offering, 1 cubit and a half long, 1 cubit and a half wide, and 1 cubit high. On this, they laid the instruments in which they slaughtered the burnt offerings and the sacrifice. Inside were hooks, a handbreadth wide, fastened all around, and the flesh of the sacrifices was on the tables. Okay, North Gate offering chamber. Verse 38 tells you there's a room for washing the sacrificial animals prior to slaughter. They say they wash the burnt offering. I assume they mean they were going to wash them before they burn them, but that would make sense. Verse 39 tells you there's 4 tables on either side of the vestibule as they go in, probably used for washing the sacrifices. Then the 3 types of offerings that they mention here. Burnt offering, completely burned up. The smoke rises to turn away God's wrath, and that's what they would have done out in that big altar out front. Purification altering, priests lay hands on the animals. We've read about this before. Slits the throat, and then the blood is daubed on sacred objects and spaces. Okay, purification through blood. And the reparation offering, it could be monetary, it could be offering animals. Okay, and this is, there's all sorts of crimes that need forgiveness, and I could give you a list of them, but some of them are pretty unpleasant, let's put it that way. So anyway, verse 40 and 43, there's 4 tables outside for the actual slaughter of animals. Okay. And then this just describes the priestly chambers outside the inner gate, were the chambers for the singers in the inner court, one facing south at the side of the northern gateway and the other facing north at the side of the southern gateway. And then he said to me, this chamber which faces south is for the priests who have charge of the temple. The chamber which faces north is for the priests who have charge of the altar. Okay, these are the sons of Zadok from the sons of Levi. who come near the Lord to minister him. So they have for different priests, they have different chambers, is what that is telling you. We saw that why there's two on either side of the worship area. Okay. And he's measuring dimensions here, and I think this is probably the last one. Yeah. Somebody want to read 47 through 49?
And he measured the court 100 cubits long and 100 cubits wide, 4 square. The altar was in front of the temple. Then he brought me to the vestibule of the temple and measured the doorposts of the vestibule, 5 cubits on this side and 5 cubits on that side. And the width of the gateway was 3 cubits on this side and 3 cubits on that side. The length of the vestibule was 20 cubits, and the width 11 cubits. And by the steps which led up to it there were pillars by the doorposts, one on this side and another on that side.
Why have we just gone through 49 verses and all we've gotten is engineering details?
Well, but we're not.
God loves engineers.
But I developed a theory. Okay, I'm just going to give you, these are some depictions of the thing, and you see it's a little bit different. They got the weird kitchens on the corners, but just give you some idea of what. Okay, so I'm going to conclude with a question. You know, we talk about a lot. I learned that when I'm reading something and there's something that doesn't seem to fit, that's when you stop and go, this doesn't feel like it's supposed to be in there. Well, maybe I'll just go on and I'll figure it out later. Well, you never go back. So stop and look at it. Why is this in here? Okay. Why is all this engineering detail in here? Okay. So we'll conclude with what purpose does this vision serve? Okay. We've learned that there's no information that is in scripture that does not serve a purpose. Okay. We've learned that when something seems out of place or we don't understand it, that's when we stop and look at it. It's probably a hidden gem. And this is I think, going to turn out to be one. We know that from scripture and archaeology also, they have actually done, in the last century, they did excavations that gave us a pretty good idea what the second temple will look like. We already knew what Solomon's looked like. Okay, so we know that this temple is going to differ pretty radically from the other constructions. Okay. And this was my theory that it came up, and I found some corroboration of this. I believe the sole purpose of this chapter, and indeed chapters 40 through 48, is to promise and give hope to the Babylonian exiles and to us today. We have an assurance that God's perfect temple and kingdom is in our future and will be with us for eternity. What you're seeing with all this detail is God's perfect order. He's going to make this perfect. It's going to be a place where we restore worship, and we do it perfectly this time. Okay. So I went, that's my opinion. I got to go find something because I got to find some corroboration on this. And I finally found something on Bible Hub, the purpose of the temple. Now I rewrote this a little bit because it got a little bit, hope and restoration. This gives us hope and restoration that we will be restored. In a time of national crisis, Ezekiel's vision served to instill hope. It assured the exiles that the presence of God would return to his people in a new and profound way. It does the same thing for us today. It's a picture of holiness and divine order. This vision dedicates extensive space to regulations and precise structures, underscoring the theme of holiness. The new temple's exact dimensions and rituals exemplify God's holy order restored among his people. It portrays a cleansed community that carefully follows divine standards. We're going to do it right this time. We're not going to fall away. Okay. Covenant continuity. It's going to tell us that God's covenant with us will always be there. God's promise to dwell among his people stretches from the tabernacle in Exodus to the first temple, first Kings, through the exile and into this visionary temple of the future. The architectural shifts do not negate the continuity, rather they showcase the evolving revelation of God's plan. And that's, I think, all I can do without getting into your stuff.
Yeah, but you know what this reminds me of? When Jesus said, I go to prepare a place for you, we think of it as a place to live, but it could also be a place to worship.
Mhm.
And if we have this much detail about this future temple, it just that could give the people in Jesus' time hope as they go back and read the scrolls
Mhm.
in Ezekiel, because, oh, okay, maybe now we know better what Jesus is going to go do.
Yeah. I just thought this was interesting that it came right at the time when they were starting to turn away from the Lord, maybe toward Marduk.
Hmm.
And it gives a perfect picture of a perfect God and a perfect place to worship him.
Yeah.
So, for that,
Good job, Kevin.